Welcome back to another episode of Get Real with Casey Kasem, the podcast that takes a look behind the scenes of the fantasy football industry through interviews with analysts and content creators in the space. On this episode, I chatted with Austin Thompson, someone you may know from his work with Eat Sleep Fantasy, where he's an editor while also putting out his own content. We talked about a ton of stuff in this one, including being mistaken for Darius Rucker, wanting to have a stat associated with his name someday, watching cooking shows, liking AJ McCarron, search engine optimization, why he decided to start putting out content, plus much more. Check Austin out on Twitter at Austin Wrote That. You should also follow me on Twitter at TheCaseyKasem and the podcast at GetReal_pod. This podcast is a proud member of the DAP Network. You can subscribe to the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network on whatever podcast platform you use to get all the brilliant DAP shows in one spot, including this one. Thank you again for the support you have given this podcast. Oh yeah, I meant to mention this as well. I can't believe that I've gone through recording this many podcasts and I've never brought it up, but I have 3 dogs. So yes, they show up in the background of this episode, and they show up in almost every single episode. It's not a real podcast until a dog starts barking. Anyway, with that out of the way, here's my conversation with Austin Thompson. It's so hard to just come in you're just having a conversation because I got to tell you, usually this amount of time and this, and then I go directly into the question. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's always awkward. And then I went directly into the question. So it was like, no, like, hey, because we had talked prior to me pressing record, but like I immediately was like, so as a kid. And she's like, what? So I won't take you off guard too much, but try to keep you on your feet, Austin. But how have you been?
Pretty good. I cannot complain. How about you?
It's what's today? Wednesday. See, I thought it was Thursday and that there was football on, and I'm like, all right, but that's tomorrow.
That's okay. I told my wife yesterday morning when I left the house, hey, don't forget, I have a podcast tonight. I won't be home.
Yeah.
And then around lunchtime, I was like, yeah, I think it's tomorrow. Yep, it's tomorrow. Check my schedule. And then she calls me and she's like, hey, you told me this morning that you were recording today, but on the calendar in the kitchen, it says tomorrow. Which one of us is confused? I was like, well, probably both of us, But I was like, no, it's tomorrow. I had it wrong. I never know what day it is.
I should because Monday through Friday, get that grind on, but it's like, I don't know. It all runs together. And when the weekend's here, that's the only time I really care about it anyway. So.
See, I work for myself.
Yeah.
And I pretty much work every day.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. It's weird. I work for myself, but like I have an insane schedule. So there's a lot of times when Saturday and Sunday, I just come to the office because no one's here and I can do whatever I want to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. But yeah, my days run together. I'm just like, oh, it's fine.
It's fine. Well, it is what it is, right? Adulthood. So here's a fun transition. See, I told you I'm horrible at these transitions, but so going back to that time, the simpler time where we could actually remember what day it was. But
yeah.
No, where'd you grow up and how was that whole, growing up thing?
So this is a fun story. I am originally from California.
Okay.
That's where I was born at. But my parents are both from the South. I live in Tennessee. Both my parents are from Tennessee. They met in Milwaukee through mutual friends, had me and my brother in California. And then I moved to Milwaukee where I started school. Then I moved back to California. And then after the 89 earthquake, I moved to Tennessee. And then we moved back to California. And then my parents got divorced and I moved back to Tennessee. And I've been here ever since.
I was starting to do the little drawing on my paper to try to connect that, and I kind of lost track. So we'll just say you've been in places.
Yes.
No, that's cool. So did you have a relationship with sports, or were you into sports growing up?
Have you ever seen Family Matters?
Yes.
I was Steve Urkel.
So you did that.
No. So I remember I played baseball we moved a lot. My dad wanted a lot for us and our family. He was always trying to make things better. So we moved a lot. I remember playing baseball. Like, I think I might have played 2 games of baseball when I was growing up as a kid. Didn't watch a lot of sports. We watched Super Bowl every year. That's how I got into, that was my connection to football, was every year everybody in America watches the Super Bowl. And the first one I remember is the 85 Super Bowl with the Bears. And that's why I've been a Bears fan ever since then.
Ah,
Yeah, I played sports a little bit in high school, but I wasn't good. Like I was never had aspirations. I was not going places, you
gotcha.
know.
Yeah, I've been
No.
there. I feel you on that. Yeah. But yeah, getting into football and like watching that Super Bowl. Yeah, I remember watching. The reason I'm a Cowboys fan isn't because of the Super Bowl, but like that, or the Super Bowls. Excuse me, we live in the past, but yes, yeah, but I do remember watching. That is one of my first sports memories is watching
Yeah.
them in the Super Bowl. I couldn't tell you which one it was, but I could tell you I remember Troy Aikman. So,
Yeah.
so that's really cool that and you're still a band's fair to the or fan till this day.
Yes.
Okay, do you have a
Yes.
favorite player on the team or of all time?
Refrigerator Perry is my favorite of all time
Okay,
because he was just this massive, bigger than life character. His personality transcended football. It was just so cool because I remember like seeing him in commercials and him being interviewed on like talk shows and stuff like that, and he was just so good. And he wasn't the star like Walter Payton was, but he was just he was a huge part of why they were there. So yeah, he was my guy.
that's awesome. Is there anybody on this current team that you're more
No,
likely to say is yay than
it
anybody
is.
else?
I want to have faith. I kind of like Cole Kmet.
Okay.
Um, but I can't get behind Fields. I wasn't behind Trubisky. And I'm actually probably the world's worst Bears fan, to be honest, because I haven't liked anybody on the team since '85, pretty much.
Well,
No, I like Kmet.
well, yeah, I like Komet as well, and it is funny. I've had a few Bears fans on. I had Dave Kluge on a few weeks ago, who was
Love
like,
Dave.
yeah, and he was talking about his love of Jay Cutler. We all know that's
Yeah.
so has there been a guy that you've kind of been, you know, supporting a player that you've been a supporter of that maybe hasn't lived up to everyone else's expectations you wish could get, where he should be?
On the Bears or anybody else?
Anybody else?
So
It could be the Bears.
I'm also college wise, I'm a Notre Dame fan.
Mhm.
Which makes it really bad that one of my favorite players was AJ McCarron because he played for Alabama.
Yeah.
And I always wanted that. I was like, I just want him to get a chance and start somewhere. And he never got a chance. Like I always, whether he failed or whether he made it, I just wanted to see him have the chance. And I
Yeah.
always was bummed he never got the chance.
Yeah, I mean, I my cousin, a couple of my family members are actually from, they're big Alabama supporters and stuff.
Yeah.
So I do remember, the AJ, hype
Oh yeah.
that was going on. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So I remember that. As you got older, you fell into fantasy football somehow. What was the origin story there?
So I make a joke all the time about the fact that if I see two kids running through the park, I will bet on which kid wins, or I'll bet on which kid falls. So
Okay.
I've always enjoyed gambling, betting. Whether I mean, not even just sports books or anything like that. Not for necessarily for money. I just
Right.
like betting on things. So I was always kind of into betting, and so DFS was much bigger to me in the beginning than fantasy football was. Um, I remember my first fantasy football league I ended up playing in was because I was selling cars, and one of the sales managers was like, "Hey, I got a spot in the league you want to be in?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So that was actually probably later, but yeah.
And DFS, I mean, that's an interesting thing to kind of dip your toes into at first. So, who or how did you find out about DFS?
So honestly, can't remember. I'm sure it was like one of I listen to a lot of podcasts and I'm on the internet constantly, and I'm sure it was I got targeted for multiple ads, and it was probably one of those sign up and get a free something. So I started doing the free something, and then I was setting my lineups, and I was looking for stuff on Sunday mornings,
Hmm.
and I stumbled across this YouTube channel for Eat Sleep Fantasy. And I started watching the podcast. They used to do a Sunday morning live show back when they were much more into DFS. and I got to watching these ridiculous psychos
Yes.
building lineups and giving tips and talking about all these different props and stats. And I would literally make my kids breakfast with my iPad in the kitchen on YouTube, cranked as loud as I could on Sunday mornings watching the show. And that's how I got into it. And then I was listening to the podcast, and Dale, who we both know,
Mm-hmm.
randomly was like, "Hey, we're looking for writers." And I was like, these guys are a lot like me. They're pretty dysfunctional, terrible senses of humor. Yeah, I'm sure I could write for these guys. So I just sent him a message, and he was like, "All right, you're in." He didn't ask for a sample or anything like that. He was just like, "Hey," he had seen me in the comments as a fan and stuff like that. But he was like, "If you want to write, you're more than welcome to write." So
Cool.
that's how I got started, was writing, and now I'm the editor.
I roll. No, but no, yeah, I've had Dale on the show as well. He actually said that you should come on this show, and I was
Yeah,
like, I already asked you. So we were just
that was
working on
awesome.
getting it to work. So
Yeah,
that's super dope. And yeah, my origin story is kind of the same about getting at, if you want to,
yeah.
and I'd never done it before. So had you had a passion for writing prior to that, or was this your first experience with
No,
diving into that?
I I hated English. I used to love to read. When I was a kid, I kind of enjoyed writing, and then I realized I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So I kind of just passed on writing, and I hadn't really written anything. Um, so it wasn't like a passion. It was just one of those, hey, I'll try it. It'll be a good side project. And now I'm constantly looking for a way to make this my full-time job.
Yeah, I mean, it is a grind but it's so fun too. So, putting out content for the first time, do you remember what the first kind of things you were writing about were all about?
So if I'm not mistaken, when I first started writing, they already had all the standard articles. They had a streaming article, they had a waiver wire article. Um, we had a lot more articles then than we do now, because people have kind of left. So I think the first article I wrote was an article called "What I Wish I Knew Last Week." It was kind of a recap of all the ridiculous things. Like if I was writing it now, it would have been, "Well, I wish I knew that Taysom Hill would score 3 touchdowns and blow up every DFS roster I had." Yeah, so that was the first thing I wrote.
I like that though. Like
Yeah,
it's great. I feel like kind of after talking to a bunch of people in the space that a lot of people get to write about what they want to write about at the beginning because like you said, everything else is already, so
yeah,
you know, have at it and show us what you got. And that's really fun and really awesome how you were able to find something to do that was outside of the box.
yeah.
So for people that are aspiring to do just that, what kind of advice do you have for them when they're trying to come up with content?
Do things you feel comfortable with. Everybody has the things they're good at. Some people are stat guys. Some people are, remember every stat, can tell you, that this guy ran for this many yards last week and this. But find whatever it is you're interested in and kind of put your own twist on it. And even if you have to do something that's remotely normal or remotely repetitive, just try and put your own spin on it. Like make it, when people read it or watch it or ingest it, make them remember that it was you that said that. I always think it's awesome when someone tells a stat and they attribute it to somebody else. Hey, I heard
Mhm.
Matthew Berry say this, or I heard Daniel Dopp say this, or whatever it was.
You brought up earlier about being Urkel as a kid. Now
Yes.
I know that you get you're not certain individuals, you're not certain celebrities. I know you have that in a couple bios. So
Yes.
who we're just gonna go to the personal. This isn't fantasy at all, but
Yes.
how did uh well, first of all, who are those two people that people mistake you for and why?
I get a lot of I get a lot of Darius Rucker jokes,
Yeah.
and you mean the Steve Urkel, the
Well,
Urkel,
the
and
Urkel
then
is
Darius
yeah,
Rucker.
yeah, that's who you have, right? So
So
you're not Urkel from back in the day.
yeah, so at one point in time, my Twitter handle was at not Darius Rucker, and then I was like,
That's
he's gonna see this one day and be pissed off, or some lawyer will come after me, so I changed it.
hmm.
Um, so I bartended for 5 years. When I moved in Jackson, Tennessee, where I live. When
Hmm.
I moved here, I started going to this bar, a local bar named Jimmy D's, and I went there forever when I sold cars. And then a friend of ours who was a bartender died in a car accident. And one of my friends was a manager, and she was like, "Hey, we need a replacement." And everybody knew I was around bars a lot. I'd done a lot of DJing and stuff like that. So she was like, "Hey, would you mind filling in every now and then?" I was like, "No big deal." So that filling in every now and then turned into 5 years later, like the SpongeBob thing. 5 years later,
Insert.
so I finally stopped bartending. But the whole time I was bartending, and I wear hats a lot, and
Yeah.
usually I wear them forwards. It just depends. Sometimes backwards, sometimes forwards, depending on the hat. And one day this commercial came on for Darius Rucker's new album or something like that. Some guy yells across the bar, "Damn, you look like Darius Rucker." And I was like, "Well, that's a thing now."
Yeah.
So it fluctuates between
Yeah.
Darius and Hootie,
Uh-huh.
depending on how funny
Hootie.
my friends want to be. So yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I wish somebody would call out something, even if it was something ridiculous, just so that I could be like, "Oh yeah, I got this." Oh no, no, no! I was in Italy and somebody called me Beyonce. I'm not even effing kidding. That happened. I don't know if he was just. I don't know. My wife said he was calling me Beyonce. I don't know
Yeah,
what he, but I was just like, okay, I'll go with. I feel like I'm feeling good. So yeah, I'll take her spirit and her energy. I'll
that's
totally.
right.
Oh, okay. So back to Eat Sleep Fantasy. So writing for them kind of Twitter is a big part of how I found out about Eat Sleep Fantasy,
Yeah.
and Twitter is a big reason why I found out a lot about fantasy football in general. So the Twitter community, how did you stumble across that? Did you know about it prior to writing? How did that go?
No, I had no idea there was this huge fantasy football community until Eat Sleep Fantasy. I think it was the podcast, and they were, "Hey, make sure you follow us." And then Dale has a private Facebook group for everybody who's part of the Eat Nation, he calls it. And I had no idea there were all these little pockets of all over social media that were specific to certain things, let alone fantasy football. Um, and then Matthew Berry, the great Matthew Berry,
Yep.
he was tweeting about things, about being on Twitter and Sunday mornings. And that's actually how I found out about the Scott Fish Bowl even existed, was with Matthew Berry. So yeah, now before getting into trying to create content, I had no idea, but I'm so glad that there's a community, because like I've met so many awesome people.
Yeah, there are a lot of really rad people in the community. And how do you, or what kind of advice do you have for people? Because, some people that are listening to this want to get involved with the fantasy, sports websites, they want a podcast, whatever, but they want to learn how to network. Do you have any advice for, speaking to some other people in the industry and kind of, picking their brains?
Just I'd say don't force it. One of the things I learned when I sold cars was I had a guy who was kind of a mentor to me, and he's still a really good friend. And he said, "You would never walk into a party and say, 'Hey, my name's Austin. I sell cars. Want to buy a car?' You would walk in and you would have a general, natural conversation. You'd work your way into whatever it was. So find some conversations, that people are having, and then give advice or ask questions. You don't have to, if you don't know something, don't try and say, 'Oh, I know, I'm an expert on running backs,' or whatever. Just engage in a conversation, and then people will start engaging with you. And then it's like, hey, this guy seems pretty cool, and that's how it works for me. I remember, I don't remember who it was, that I think it was like Gary Vaynerchuk was talking about how when he got on Twitter, he would go on Twitter and he would find people asking questions, and he would answer the questions that celebrities weren't responding to.
Hmm.
Sunday mornings in fantasy football, you have Matthew Berry who's on TV. You have all these people who are on TV, and people are adding them all the time.
Yeah.
They're on live TV. They can't respond to you. So if you find some comments like that, some questions people have, and you just start answering them or giving your opinion, but like, hey, now, and throw in, hey, I'm no expert, but
Right.
I'm no expert, but my take is this. And then, you make a friend on Twitter, somebody, that guy's like, I like that advice. That was really cool. And they follow you, you follow them back. And next thing you know, you've got a couple of followers.
Have you been on any other social media when it comes to fantasy football for advice or, to chat or anything
Uh,
like that? Or is Twitter solely? what you use as a platform?
Twitter's mostly it. I tried looking on Facebook, and there's a lot of the Facebook communities are like the same 10
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Twitter just seems to be where I can find more and more people. It's like every time I turn around, there's somebody new.
Right.
Even
100%.
even just in the last year, the Scott Fishbowl Podathon, I was so impressed to see people aren't
Yeah.
necessarily new in the industry, but they're new to me, and that
Right.
feels great.
Exactly.
I'm like, I'm seeing so many more women getting into this space, and I'm like, that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, they have, like, plenty of talent to choose from to have come
Yeah,
on that podcast. Like, I remember when they were, like, asking for people to come on, like, in weird hours and stuff, and now
yeah,
it's like people were, like, clawing their way through trying trying to get on for just a second,
yes.
so it's pretty awesome to see that grow. And speaking of Scott Fishbowl, I don't know, I feel like we have to bring this up a lot, and I'm sure you've heard me when I've in other episodes bring up Scott and the Scott Fishbowl, but, how I guess since you brought it up, you're in it, but
I'm in it.
how many times have you been in it? Do you know?
This is my second year, so I
Second
was
year.
in last year for the first time. Um, as an analyst, I think I might have applied as a fan and an analyst,
Mhm.
and I have multiple email addresses. And I think I separated that way. So it wasn't like I was trying to apply twice in both categories with the same email address.
Right.
And I was like, if by chance I get in both times, I just would drop out of one, whichever one he wanted me to.
Mhm.
But no, I made it in last year as an analyst for Eat Sleep Fantasy. I was in the Prince division last year.
Gotcha.
Huge Prince fan.
Okay, I was gonna ask you about music because I like to ask
Oh,
people what their musical takes are.
oh my musical takes are so strange. Um, But yeah, I made it in last year in the Prince division, and then I'm in this year in the Nashville division because I live in a town called Jackson, which is pretty much almost right in the middle of Jackson and of Memphis and Nashville.
Okay.
And my mom's from Memphis, and I go to Memphis more frequently, but I'm not a huge fan. But I looked at the Memphis group, and there wasn't a lot of people who were applying for it. So I
Mhm.
applied for Nashville, and
Mhm.
I got that. And I'm doing terrible. I'm,
It's okay.
I'm doing terrible.
I do terrible every year, so it's
It's making
totally
my
okay,
thing.
But, yeah, just be like me and just see how many times you can actually make it without doing anything, and
Yeah.
that's when. Um, so, yeah, with the Scott Fishbowl, it is really cool, like you said, you can look and see we're doing this year, the divisions are, places, and that's pretty cool, that you bring up Tennessee because my sister lives there now, but she lives in Knoxville, so it's cool anytime somebody says they're from Tennessee, I'm like, "All right, cool." I do have to go through Memphis to get, to her from where I am, so it's pretty dope. Um,
So you go to Memphis to Nashville?
to Knoxville,
I mean, I'm
down to
saying when you go to
Knoxville. Yeah,
Knoxville,
yeah.
do you
I don't
pass
even know.
Nashville?
I don't
Okay.
know.
I feel
Probably
like
I think I've seen an exit.
I think
I'm really
if
bad at I don't drive. I
the
mean, I
reason I
drive,
ask
but I just don't drive on road trips.
the reason I ask is if you go from Memphis to Nashville on
Mhm.
I-40, you'll
Mhm.
drive right past my office.
Oh, then we probably do. I'll have to wave next time because
Yeah,
we take that drive since we have dogs, so it's a bit of a
totally.
drive from the Dallas area, but we
Oh
do it.
yeah.
Uh, so um so is it anyway, let's go back. I'm getting off track. I'm starting talking about my family. Who cares? This isn't a podcast about me. This is a podcast about Austin. Austin. So okay, so you got in the first time to your Scott Fishbowl as an analyst, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And you said you're an editor now. So what exactly does that entail?
So that means that not everybody spells great. No.
Ding ding.
So it started off when I'm a huge nerd.
Mhm.
I design websites. I do all kinds of stuff like that. Design my own websites and do stuff for other people. And when I started writing, it was kind of like there was another guy named Austin, who was helping upload the articles and stuff like that. So it kind of ended up being my job as the new guy to be the person who uploaded the articles. And I was like, well, I wanted to try and change the graphics. And nobody really knew how to do the graphics on a WordPress website. So I started doing the graphics, and I started doing the editing, trying to do SEO stuff to make us pop up in search engines and stuff like that, and make our articles more relevant. And it was kind of like one of those. A couple people were like, "Hey, do you mind helping me with my article, uploading it and stuff like that?" It's like, "Hey, no problem. I don't mind at all." Next thing I know, I'm doing all the articles. And then some of those authors, writers have kind of fallen, kind of got out of the space. A lot of it for having kids and people being busy with jobs and stuff like that. So now it's actually just me and one other person, Heather Murray, who's a great writer. I had to do the waiver wire article because she's with her family on vacation. And I told her last week I'd do it. And I even started recording I do a lot of audio to text, while I'm driving or whatever it is. I use an app called Otter, and I will talk while I'm driving. And so I recorded the intro and then forgot to do the rest of the article until like last night. And I was like, oh yeah, I should start doing this. And then so I finished the waiver wire article today, after waivers are already processed, but just in case anybody, not everybody makes it. Not everybody's a waiver wire ninja.
Right.
So I put the article out anyway, but I always make fun of myself for probably being the least talented author. I like being funny, or I think I'm funny sometimes. But I leave all the writing to the smarter people, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm basically the guy who knows how to log in the website and to do all the stuff.
Hey, that's awesome. It needs to be done. It's not going to get out unless somebody's there to do that. So you have a very, so that's very integral. And, I don't think something that I could do. I know not just spelling, but yeah. Grammarly is also a great.
Grammarly is amazing.
I felt bad because I stopped writing. Well, not in general, just stopped writing, articles. So I canceled my paid. But of course they renewed it before I was like, oh crap. So I had to go in there and beg them and plead with them to please give me my money back because it's expensive.
Yeah, I know, right?
So they give it back. So if I ever get back into writing, then okay. So with writing, you also podcast. And I've heard you, on various podcasts. You even have it in your Twitter. So when you podcast, how did you first start podcasting, and what were you feeling like when you first started?
So I am probably the poster child for imposter syndrome. I know I've, listened to, I'm pretty sure all the episodes, and I know that other people have mentioned it when talking to you, they have imposter syndrome. I've always been told I have a nice voice. I used to work at fast food restaurants, and people would say, I'd be on the speaker, the drive-through. People were like, hey, you should be on the radio. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. So it's really, really weird. And it's hard for me because I want to be a perfectionist and I want to go back and edit things, but I cannot stand the sound of my own voice.
No,
I just I'm going to listen to this when it comes out. And I'm just going to be like, you sound ridiculous.
Oh, see, I didn't even listen to my own episode. So good luck getting through yours, because I don't like to listen to myself back either.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really does. I think you learn. I think what I've heard a lot of people say is they learn to get used to it, but no one really enjoys it, I don't think.
Yeah. True. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's like, yeah, I get the voice of
there's probably a couple of
most of us are kind of hard on ourselves. So
yeah, there's a couple of narcissists out there.
Sure. No, but you do have a nice voice, and I've never been in a job where I'm like fast food where people are hearing me talk. I don't like talking to people. I don't know why I do this podcast, but no, I like talking to people one-on-one, and this is fun. But I'm so happy that I came across your stuff, and I'm so happy through Eat, Sleep, Fantasy and everything else. And we kind of connected, to see you progress and get to where you are now is super dope too. Was there anything that when you first started in this industry, putting out content, that you were worried about that ended up not being as scary as you thought it was, or as hard to do as you thought it was?
I cuss a lot. I cuss in my real life. I cuss a lot. And one thing about me is because like I said, I usually use an app. My handwriting is terrible. I can't type words of crap. I mean, I am two finger Coding, I'm terrible at typing.
Like it a lot. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So so my biggest thing was like I was always afraid that like I'd be judged for the fact that I cuss. And
Yeah.
I try and write the way that I speak. Because a lot of it is me speaking into a device, and then even if I have to edit later on, I do it like that. And it comes from being in the military. I was in the Army, and I cussed before that, but I learned to cuss a lot more after the Army. And I was always afraid that people would look negatively on that. And now it's got to the point where I'm like, the rest of the world cusses too, whether they put it out there or not. So I was always really afraid that that would impact me negatively. I mean, I'm probably never going to be on CBS. You know, I'm never going to be up there on NBC Sportsline or anything like that. But, you know, people are accepting of stuff like that on a podcast. So that's cool with me. You know, I like that.
Yeah. I know. It's funny to me when people ask before we get started, can I cuss on your podcast? Because I'm like, I know there are podcasts that, you know, kind of frown upon it. But for the most part, it's like, you know,
Yeah.
we're speaking like we talk, and we're,
Yeah.
you know, exactly. We're telling people how it is in our own words. And those are some of our own words.
Exactly. Yep.
So if you had an opportunity to write articles about anything else, do you think that there's something that you're as passionate about as fantasy football that you would want to write about?
So my office I'm an entrepreneur, like I said, so I work in a very large building. It's a renovated restaurant.
Cool.
So the front part that used to be the dining room, my office is called a co-working space. So we have a lot of members that have their own businesses, and you kind of come in and you can just work anywhere in the building. We have a couple of desks and spot with monitors, so you can bring your laptop and you can sit down and work and plug your monitor in and stuff like that. But the kitchen, we gutted the entire kitchen and made it into a maker space. So I have thousands of dollars worth of power tools, and we have saws, we have a big CNC, we have 2 lasers, we have 6 3D printers. So I like working in the makerspace. I actually started a company completely around the makerspace, a company where I do laser engraved gifts and cufflinks and coasters and stuff like that. So I've gotten really big into the makerspace world, and as it translates with kids and young people who we get tours come through here all the time. STEM is becoming real big in school.
Oh yeah.
So it's science, technology, engineering, and math. And so I've gotten real big into the STEM world and teaching, you know, people, adults and kids alike, that all the traditional occupations aren't necessarily what you have to do. You can find things that you do that you like and that you're good at and translate that into a job. So yeah, I could talk about STEM more than anybody wants to hear about STEM, probably.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people that want to hear about STEM. We'll save that for another podcast because,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, you don't want to spoil all of it all at once. No, it's not that I'm not interested, but I wanted to know, when you were a kid, was there a specific job that you wanted when you grew up?
All right. So
Gotta prepare yourself. Here we go.
I've always been cynical. I've always been kind of a smartass, but I've also been like really, really honest. And I get that from my mom. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a magician.
Oh.
And when that kind of my dad kind of squashed that whole dream. It was like, that's ridiculous. Being a magician is stupid. So I had to find something else to tell people I wanted to be. And when I grew up, being a cop wasn't cool and being a teacher wasn't cool. And so I just would tell everybody I wanted to be old, because on my dad's half of the family, not everybody made it to being old. Like his grandparents, my grandparents, his parents died before I was ever born. And my dad was in his 30s. So he lost both of his parents at a young age. So like getting old wasn't something my family always did. Even on my mom's side, I had an uncle who passed away at a young age. So I was like, I'm just going to tell everybody I want to be old when I grow up because it's different. So yeah, I would tell everybody I wanted to be old. And then like people would look at you like, no, really, what do you want to be? I was like, no, old. I want to be old. Yeah, I got in trouble a lot for being a smartass when I was just really trying to be
Yeah,
serious.
you're like, I'm not trying to be a smart ass.
I just
Listen,
want to
let me tell you
live,
my
damn it. Let me
history.
live.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You're already thinking outside of the box as a kid, so that's
Yeah,
fun to see it go into your adulthood as well.
yeah,
Um, and I know fantasy football was a passion for all of us. And you said DFS was your first, toe dip into the whole
yeah.
thing. Do you play all different kinds of fantasy now, or what kinds of fantasy football do you play?
Oh, if you even hint at a league, I'm probably going to be yeah, I'll play. Or when a new site comes out, that's one thing Dale's really good at is finding all these brand new,
Hmm.
super obscure websites with different ways of calculating points and different kinds of contests. So I try and join everything. Like I've got an account with Owner's Box, and I love. I seem to do better on FanDuel, but I enjoy DraftKings more. I don't know why. It's like I enjoy giving away money. It's like, hey, just take all
Yeah.
my money this week, DraftKings. Um, I like competing in the big tournaments. I will find as many free tournaments. Like we have a WhatsApp group for the website, and I'm constantly whatever free entries I can find. Like Yahoo does a free contest every week that most people don't even know about. It's free to enter. Never won it. Never. No, I'm not even come close. Now I've gotten to like close to cashing. Um, but yeah, I just like any kind of league. I love redraft. It's the most fun because you start over. But then like dynasty is kind of like being the general manager of your own franchise. So I just love it all. But I probably say that redraft is the one I do the most and enjoy the most.
Do you know how many leagues you're actually in right now?
11, which
11.
is
All right.
down from 17 I was in last year.
And if you just go tell somebody that 11, they're going to be like, whoa. And when you're like, well, I was in 17, they're just not going to be able to process
Yeah.
it. That's what I usually find. So it's pretty fun. With the DFS situation, when people get into that, because it kind of intrigues me. I don't play a whole lot of DFS.
Yeah.
I wish I did, but I don't know. It always slips my mind. I'm very, very scatterbrained. But with DFS, what kind of advice do you have for people that want to get, involved with DFS? They just never played it before.
Don't be afraid to do the cliche things. Don't be afraid to play the chalk, but also at the same time, don't be afraid to find that one player is going to make you different. That's what a lot of people will go out there and just build a lineup of only guys they know the name of.
Hmm.
Um, I'm a big fan of. I mean, you need a lot of times if it's going to be, Derrick Henry's playing against a team with a terrible defense, you have to play Derrick Henry because everyone's going to have Derrick Henry if they
Yeah.
want to win. But then you have to find that one outlier player. Like last week, it was Shakir, the receiver for the Buffalo Bills.
Mm.
Not a lot of people were talking, but you weren't. A lot of
Yeah.
fantasy analysts were talking about him, but not a lot of people in on Twitter and in the group chats were talking about him. That was a very good. I guess maybe it's. I hate calling them sleepers because a sleeper kind of implies that it's somebody that nobody's paying attention to.
Yeah.
It's just it's this week. It's this guy is more relevant. You
Hmm.
find like this week. I'll say it's. I think Sky. I forget if it's Sky or Skylar Thompson is the quarterback for the Dolphins because Tua is out and because Bridgewater is still in concussion protocol. So the
So yeah.
Miami Dolphins quarterback, who has a ton of good receivers,
Yes.
should be a good option, but not many people are going to want to pick him.
Right. By the way, guys, if this comes out later, this current date is 10/12/2022. So this advice may not be helpful for you in the future, but don't come back at Austin and be like,
Yeah.
yo, dude, you told me and Tua was playing, man. I don't even understand. You're like, this is 2023. Like,
Yeah.
no, but
Thank
I
you.
totally, no, but I like the thought process there is really cool. To
Yeah.
see how, and, yeah. What about like rules or like settings for leagues? Are there a specific rule or setting that you enjoy having in your leagues?
I love Superflex, and I'm mad because I feel like everybody you ask that question to says Superflex. I feel like that's the most common answer you've gotten, and
Everybody
I want to
likes it,
be
I guess,
creative.
except for Andy Behrens,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So-
Yeah, Superflex is just I like points. I
yeah.
like offense. It was just funny because when I played football very briefly, I played on the defense because I like hitting people. I like the violence. When fantasy football, it's all about winning and scoring more points. Even on defense, you're getting points for sacks and for interceptions. So anything that gets you more points. So a quarterback has the ball a lot, and if you could find a good throwing quarterback and a good running quarterback and pair them together,
Mm-hmm.
it makes a great superflex offense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see strategy, guys. It's all nice. It's so nice to have a plan. Podcasting. I want to get back to your podcasting voice and the
Yeah.
vocal tones of Austin. Um, so um, See, and now I'm at a loss of words because I said so many times because I'm trying to get this correct. Like how do I want to describe this? Oh, I know. Podcasting. Do you prefer podcasting over writing, or is writing something that you enjoy more than podcasting?
I like podcasting more. My problem is my life is chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It has been chaos since the minute I got in the fantasy football industry. My
Yeah.
dad used to live with me before he passed away. My dad was sick and he lived with me, and I took him to dialysis every day. So I had to take him to dialysis, pick him up from dialysis. I
Mm-hmm.
also have 6 kids, 4 biological, 2 adopted. They don't all live with me. Of the adopted one, we adopted I have a now 4-year-old child.
Wow.
In addition to my oldest, who just turned 23. So yeah, I never know what I'm gonna be doing. I've got sports. I have taking kids to school. I have picking up nieces and nephews from school. So finding a time to podcast is really hard for me. I would ideally like to get up in the morning, take my kids to school, come into work when it's super quiet, record a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and then be able to go about the rest of my day. But something else will inevitably show up, some other thing, a
Yeah, that
kid
does.
needs medicine or forgot to do this, or my wife needs this, or my wife, needs that, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's finding a time to podcast. That's why when you asked if I'd be on,
Uh-huh.
it was great because you were like 6 o'clock, and I was like, I'm at the office.
Yeah.
Usually, office closes at 5. I'm kind of a unicorn. I have access to my office whenever I want to, because I kind of also work at my office, which is really really weird. I'm always doing things around the office, so it's
Right.
kind of like I'm an unofficial employee. So they're like, yeah, you can come and go as you please, which is great because I have kids and dogs and a wife at home. So being able to be here whenever I want to, I usually we close at 5 and at 6 o'clock, usually when I head home, but I don't have to head home.
Right.
So this is like the perfect time for me to be able to record, but it doesn't work for everybody else.
Doesn't work for most people.
Yeah,
I promise. Because I mean, yeah, I get it. It is hard to schedule people and to get your podcast to work with everybody else's schedules are very hard to do. So
yeah,
6 o'clock when you were like, oh yeah, we're in the same time. Yeah, that's great. Like totally. And I'm like, great, because like I get off of work at 5. So 6 o'clock gives me a little bit of time to rest
exactly.
and prepare myself for podcasting. Do you have a ritual or anything you do before you go on a podcast, or you just go straight into it?
I make sure I go to the bathroom first because I try and drink a lot of water. And I'm
Mhm.
just like, I'm sitting here. Yeah, the last thing you want to do is be rocking back and forth, fidgeting because you got to go to the bathroom.
Like, yeah, that's all you're
Um,
thinking about. You're like,
yeah,
"Ugh."
no. So this room that I'm in, like I said, place used to be a restaurant.
Mhm.
This room used to be the freezer, and we gutted the entire building. We gutted the freezer, sold all the internal parts of the freezer, and we have what's called a media room. We call it a media room because like it's just for whatever. Like I have a background behind me, but we have like this grayish one, a white one, and then we have a wooden wall behind that. So it looks aesthetically pleasing, and we have all these lights and different things like that. So right before I got on, I jumped on a StreamYard to try and make sure it looked decent.
Yeah.
Because it's always a pain because I wear glasses. and I have to try and get the light so where it's not just like I've got these two glowing orbs on my face.
Like this.
Yeah, that's been the hardest thing for me. It's like
That's why I don't do video. That's the only reason why I don't put the video out. Is because I wear glasses. Well, yeah, podcasting and lighting and getting all that, microphone and everything else.
Yeah.
When you went about like determining what you were going to need to podcast, how did you go about doing the research for all of that?
So I still kind of am. I was really big into Gary Vee for a while, and Gary Vee has a guy named D-Rock. And D-Rock he does a vlog. He's the guy who follows Gary Vee around initially and was doing all the stuff. Well, he put out a blog a couple years ago about how he got started with Gary Vee, and in that blog is a list of all the stuff he bought in the beginning, like all the cheaper gear that he bought. The cheaper cameras, microphones, stuff like that. And then he has the what I have. It's like a then and now, before and after. So he has the hey, I get it. People are on a budget. Go with this microphone, this camera, this, that, this light, whatever it is. And then he was like, so I have like this little list I keep on my computer of things I want to get for our podcast studio here at the office. We have, I've got a Blue Snowball microphone and I've got a Yeti microphone, but I want to get some better ones. And I kind of look at what the podcast that I enjoy watching and listening to. I like to see what it is they have, like Andy, Mike, and David. I mean, Andy, Mike, and Jason. Andy, Mike, and David. Andy, Mike, and Jason, the fantasy footballers. They're really big into having the sound right and stuff like that. So, I started watching and paying attention to what they were doing. But COVID made the biggest difference.
Yeah,
because there were so many people. The amount of podcasts I listened to or morning shows and stuff that got affected by COVID. And I'm like, you work for ESPN and your podcast sounds like dog shit. Like that is, I was like, what are these guys doing? I was like, what are you using a CNC?
Yes. Probably.
That was probably when I started paying attention to it the most.
Yeah.
It was when COVID hit and everybody was going remote. And I was like, okay, this does make a huge difference.
When did you start putting content out? Do you remember about what time? I don't know if I asked you that already or not.
2019.
Okay. So prior to COVID becoming like what it is or what it was, even at the beginning, we were all like, so did you have to adjust how you put out your fantasy football content, or did it still come out the way you wanted it to and you didn't have to do much tweaking?
No, see, so I like to say I don't podcast. I podcast at the internet. I kind of like I just throw things out there and see. Like I do it sporadically. Like I have two podcasts, neither of which is any good. Neither of which I tell anybody about.
You should.
I want to get them better, and that's my biggest thing. I'm at a point with writing and content and editing and doing website stuff where I'm confident. I don't even a bad article that I put out is still fairly okay, to most standards. But I have these visions of what I want my podcast to be, and I'm not there yet. And it's just like I haven't found the thing. Like when you look at certain people, like they click. When you look at certain groups, Nick, I cannot say his last name.
Ercolano?
Yes, BDG.
BDGE. Yeah.
Yes, those guys. I've watched his stuff because of you, and just the way he's come along since I learned about him, and they're figuring it out. Like they're getting all their stuff. The fantasy footballers. You look at them. There's lots of groups out there where it's more than one person, or even solo pods where they kind of have got it all figured out. And the thing that I want, I haven't got it yet. Like, so I'm not sure how much research you did or how deep you dug. I own the domain. I'm real big into buying website domains because I'm a huge nerd and I like building websites. So I have the Fantasy Football Morning Show. I own the domain Fantasy Football Morning Show. Here's my cup that I had made for it's a podcast and no one can see my cup but you. Sorry.
No, but I can see it, and I can
You can
say
see it.
super awesome
So, well, thank
mug.
you. So, I started that because you put me on open bar, which
Oh yeah, I
the
love
open
that.
bar is essentially late night TV for fantasy football. And I
Yep.
think it's phenomenal. And they need to record some more. I've already added them before. So I have aspirations to one day be on the open bar.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah. I've watched so many episodes and I love it. So I was like, one day I was like, how come there's no morning show?
Yeah.
There's no fantasy football morning show. I mean, there are. You have the Sirius XM show, and then you have all these, Get Up and all these different shows that are transitioning into talking about sports and betting and fantasy sports. Everybody's incorporating it, but it was like, there was never a format for like a talk show kind of fantasy football morning show. So I said, well, I bought the domain. I've got it. I'll throw up a small, ridiculous website and I'll make a podcast and I'll record it. And that was before COVID hit, where I would get in the car, take my kid to school, come in early, record, and then try and put it out. And I would do the live streaming and I learned about StreamYard and stuff like that. And it never fit. It never was the way I wanted to. Even when I had people who would get online and ask questions and interact with me, people enjoyed it, but it just didn't feel right. So finally, just recently, I think I figured out a format to where I think I kind of missed the boat with myself. I want to help people, and I want to find as many small accounts as I possibly can that have content
Mm-hmm.
and or want to make content and don't have the time to do all the heavy lifting. And I kind of want to piece it all together. So I think I'm going to turn the uh, fantasy football morning show into like a show where I host it
Mm-hmm.
and I incorporate other people who want to get in to the fantasy football industry, where I help showcase their content. Because there are lots of people out there who are doing things like TikTok and making YouTube videos and stuff like that, but don't really have a platform for it. And I'm just like, what
Mm-hmm.
if I just showed kind of like what you're doing with this podcast? Like you're putting us on. Like you have a bigger following than I do, and that's okay because at one point in time you didn't. And at one point in time, Troy King didn't have the
Yeah.
following he had. He didn't have a blue check mark. He didn't
Right.
have a lot of people, and it took somebody else to help them be put
Mm-hmm.
on. It's kind of like in the music industry, where like you're a rapper and you get a feature on someone else's album,
Mm-hmm.
or you produce somebody else's album, and next thing it's
Yep.
like, who's this Kanye? Who's this kid with the backpack? Who's this guy? Who's that guy? And everybody isn't everybody's cup of tea,
Right.
and
That's
that's
true.
fine. But if I can help you as a person who views the content find one other person that you like, you're like, oh, I like that guy, or I like that girl, or that person makes good points, and I can help bridge the gap, then I'm just like, that's going to be cool content. So that's kind of what I want to turn. I can't even remember the question you actually asked me
Oh man.
before I started rambling.
No, but
Um,
with I don't know. We were talking about COVID. We were talking about I don't know. I can't barely think about like how I got home today. How did I get home? I know I drove here, but how? No, but that I really, really, really love helping other people, and especially people that don't have a following. Like, I don't have a huge following, but I do have a bigger following than some
yeah,
people, and it's really cool to be able to like help see that and see people, get bigger and bigger and bigger, and
yeah.
have people come on the show before they blow up. It's always fun too. It's just a blast, and seeing you be passionate about wanting to help other people out is super dope to see as well. That whole concept sounds really rad.
No, thank you. I
So
appreciate that.
and like totally and if somebody comes to you and they have questions or they need some advice about like putting out content, are you one of those people that's like willing to help out and give the
Oh,
the advice
totally.
that they need?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, people message me all the time. They DM me, questions because like I am I'm a huge overall fantasy football person, but
Hmm.
I'm also in like what I call some of the more nerdier communities. Like I always joke with footballers. Kyle Borgen, I can't say his Borg and Betts
Mhm.
have their DFS podcast, and they talk about being spreadsheet bros all the time. So like I will, whenever I'm doing some stuff with a project or whatever, I will throw out some hashtag spreadsheet bro questions, and then like I get a message from my DMs. Oh man, I'm so glad there's another nerd out here like me, trying to do different calculations. And I have this weird desire to have one stat that's attributed directly to me. And I've been working on it for like a year, so I'm trying to develop that, and I'm building this huge, massive, ridiculous Google spreadsheet with all these football stats. Um, so yeah, I want to have a stat that people associate with me one day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, that's a great thing to aspire to have, like, for
we'll
real, though,
see.
because you
With
can totally, yeah.
with my luck, it'll be a stat somebody else already invented.
Hey, you'd be like, I mean, it's just creative, just the liberties, taking a little bit,
Yeah.
but yeah, so when you are putting out content and you're like trying to get more people to get eyes on it, is there a specific way that you go about getting your content out to the people to be able to listen to or to see?
So one of the things that I focus on, once again, because I'm a huge nerd, is the SEO. That's one of the reasons I got to be the editor, because I knew how to do the SEO stuff. That's one of the things I do in my real life is help people get found on Google. You get their help their business be found or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so I have this sick fascination with Google and SEO, which is search engine optimization, and trying to get things found and using the right keywords, because the fantasy football industry is super. It's a lot of repetitive. I mean, we're all doing the same. We're all using a lot of the same words, like
Hmm.
NFL week 1, NFL week 2, waiver wire week 1, waiver wire week 2. So I
Right.
try and find different spins and different combinations to put, so where, I'm never going to beat a CBS Sports or ESPN, or I'm never going to beat those articles because they have
Hmm.
millions of people flocking to their site every day looking for stats or whatever it is.
Right.
So, I just want to try and be in the conversation so that the internet can find out, what we have out here, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else's stuff, and then also I try and attach our names to our content.
Hmm.
Like, whenever like, Heather's waiver wire article, I would try and make sure that when you search it, it doesn't come up with just waiver wire. It comes up with waiver wire and Heather Murray. So maybe one day she could be synonymous with the waiver wire, at
Hmm.
least in a small circle.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I wrote an article for the fantasy footballers when I was with them, and it came, it was one of the first articles when you searched for something, and I
Yeah.
was like, yeah. So I like took a screenshot of it just so I could be like this, because this is like never happens ever.
Yeah.
It's
It's an
never
awesome
going to
feeling.
happen again. So yeah, that was super super cool, and like to create the perfect title or the correct or the perfect like set of words. How does your brain go about like figuring out exactly how to go about making the perfect one?
So I go into what what do I want you to see when you search? Okay. So like I want you to see Heather's name or my name or whoever it is. And I want you to see the one thing that probably makes my content different from everybody else's. Like, waiver wire articles are kind of the same mundane thing. Like I always try and put, like today when I did mine, I like to put names of people. I mean, people that are real waiver wire pickups, but Cooper Cup can't be a waiver wire pickup.
Right.
And, we can't have Isaiah McKenzie for the third week in a row be the Bills receiver you have to have. So trying to, when you search, I want to try and have a different name show up, like a name that maybe is normally put at the bottom of a list. I kind of like to, I guess I didn't think about this until right now, but I would guess in my head, I reversed engineer the list. So all the popular people I put towards the bottom of the list because everybody has them.
Right.
So I try and go with the top. So if you see my article and you get that little snippet where it's just a section of the article, I want you to hopefully see a name that you haven't seen before. And you'd be like, who's this Max Klein guy? You know, um, so there, yeah, that's just trying to be different.
Yeah, and that's a theme that I think is on a lot of these podcast episodes, is to try to be different, and
Yeah.
like that goes for like articles and like some people are really big into like thumbnails for like their YouTube videos or
Mhm.
whatever. And you were talking about the websites and creating websites,
Yeah.
and making everything visually pleasing. How
Mhm.
important is it to have that kind of like visually pleasing brand?
Oh, it's super important. And once again, because listening to your podcast, a lot of the people who have done video stuff, and I think it might have Nick was one of the guys who also talked about it, is having that thumbnail be this cool. There's a lot of there's actually videos on YouTube just on making your thumbnail. Like you can find hour-long videos about the thumbnail, and there's some guys out there who will like critique them for you. You'd be like, "Hey, what about this?" Say, "All right, you need to move this here. You need to put your font bigger, the face bigger, or whatever it is." Um, a lot of people when they put out content, verbal, when they're putting out articles, they don't think about the image that shows up on social media,
Hmm.
because some people don't even put a picture with theirs, or they use the same recycled picture, or they steal a picture from somebody else. They just Google Aaron Rodgers and find the first Aaron Rodgers photo that shows up, and they use that as their thumbnail, and it doesn't stick out because I saw that same photo earlier when ESPN put it out or whoever it was. So I try and make ours stick out, and like with the waiver wire, um, and it wasn't even intentional, because Heather's the only female writer we have, but I used a kind of pink neon glow on the waiver wire words,
Hmm.
and then I changed the background picture, and I fade it out. So every week I pick a player that she used in her article, and I try and make it a more obscure player, because you're like you scan it, you look at it, and you're like, who is that?
Yeah,
Who's number
never seen that
6?
guy.
Yeah, who's number 6 on the Titans or whatever it is.
It's a
But
stock
using
photo.
yeah, you know, even if it's a kicker, I don't care. I'll just try and find somebody who's not like I rarely try to use a Derrick Henry photo or whatever it is. I use an obscure photo, and then I try and use the team colors, to kind of highlight and do the overlay of
Hmm.
it. So that way it sticks out. It's like waiver wire, what I'm looking for, but then also, just a different look to it. A lot of people don't think about their images when they post an article.
Is there anything else that you think people overlook when they're putting out an article and posting it for people to see?
Being themselves. Um, I mean, as far as an article, I mean, it's the one thing I like about Matthew Berry and a lot of these bigger guys is they have their thing. Like Matthew Berry's got love hate.
Hmm.
Daniel Dopp's thing, and his content in general at all is Daniel Dopp is a very caring person. He wants everybody to love everybody else and be nice and be good to people, and he puts that forward in everything he does. Nick is he's a very New York kind of guy, and he comes across every piece of content he does comes across and it feels very, very him. You the same way. All your content is very, very you. It's very rad, and I love like me being a 45-year-old dude who grew up partly in California. I
Yeah.
love that somebody still uses the word rad.
Oh, I will
You know,
use that word until the day I die, I
yeah,
promise.
but I mean, like, it's like but when you tweet, you do the same thing. Like, "Hey guys, have a rad day. Make
Yeah.
sure to have a rad day," or just whatever it is. Like, it's your content, no matter where you're putting yourself out there. So it's like there's even in tweets, there's certain people. Uh, Linda, when she puts out her tweets, Cooter Doodle, her tweets always sound like if you took away the avatar and you just blocked it out so I couldn't see the avatar or the name, and you
Hmm.
just read me the tweet, I'd be like, that's totally Cooter. That's totally Cooter. You know, Dave Kluge, when it just everybody. I like people who have takes and
Hmm.
stances and content that just feels so them, because I like authenticity.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
that's funny because I do scroll through sometimes. I'm like, that sounds like a so and so tweet, and then you
Yeah.
see it, and you're like, oh yeah. And the same thing goes on Facebook. I'm in a Facebook group that's like that too. I'm like, I know who's posting those memes. It's
Oh, yeah.
Brittany. So like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I know who that is. And yep,
Yep.
you're right. Twitter and like the conversations on Twitter, usually they're positive. Do you ever get concerned that if you're giving out advice, people are gonna, you know, come at you about giving out the wrong advice or things like that? Or are you pretty chill when it comes to giving out advice?
I'm hoping someone comes at me. There's no way. There's no better way to get. I keep looking for hot
Come at
takes.
me.
I have been on the. Now, of course, I'm going to blank on his name now. The offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. Um, Literally, I can't think of his name right now. I can see his face, but every year I talk about how he should be a head coach, and he's not. And then it came out last year that he may kind of be a jerk. People just don't like him. But like I keep trying to put out things I legitimately believe,
Right.
but like takes, and I'm like, I hope someone comes at me for this one take, and no one will come at me for anything I say. You know, I'll tell you the stupidest story. So, have you seen the Wonder Years remake?
I haven't. I've been
Okay,
meaning to. That's on my list.
so I tweeted, I hate remakes. I
Yeah.
hate when anything stop
Mm,
taking my childhood and remaking it. Call
remaking
it.
it.
I was like, I'm sure this show is going to be a great show. You could have just called it anything else but the Wonder Years, okay? And I
Yeah.
probably would have watched it. So I tweeted out randomly because it was trending one day how I was not going to watch this Wonder Years remake. Black Twitter came for me like I was a
Oh boy.
Klansman.
They're coming for you for
Yeah, they
that
came for me
take.
hard. I
You
can't
said,
believe you're
listen,
not going to watch a black show. I was like, I'm pretty sure
bruh.
it's a bunch of white people making the show, but whatever. I don't even care about that. I just didn't want it was the fact that it was a remake.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it doesn't
I'm
matter
a
what it
huge
is. You don't want the
yeah.
remake out there yet.
I loved the old Quantum Leap
Yeah.
when I was a kid, and now that
Yeah.
there's a new
Yeah.
Quantum Leap,
I tried to watch that and
I can't. I refuse. I have to. I'm
I fell
standing.
asleep, I think.
I'm gonna die on this hill for no particular reason. Nope, it's not even that important or life altering. It's just I can't stand remaking a thing that was already good,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. See, and we just watched the new Hocus Pocus, so we were like, is it gonna be and we liked it just because it was completely, they weren't trying to remake it. It was
Yeah,
completely,
yeah. It's a continuation.
continuation.
My
Which, yeah, they're not trying to
so
just like take the story and
yeah,
make it theirs, but keep most of this.
my wife loves that film. The 4-year-old, my daughter, she loves Hocus Pocus. Um, so they all have all these shirts with "It smells like children" and it's all a bunch of Hocus Pocus. And even in my laser engraving company, I have made a ton of Hocus Pocus related gifts.
Oh yeah.
So I kind of like just trolled all my friends that first weekend it came on Disney Plus. I was like, watch that terrible remake. Watch that terrible remake. It's not a remake, so it doesn't break my rule. But it's funny. I started watching it last night and I fell asleep. I had my
Yeah.
daughter was watching it with me, and we both fell asleep. And
Oh.
I'm up till like 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning because I'm a sociopath who doesn't sleep 4 hours a day. And so yeah, I tried watching it last night and I fell asleep like barely 5 minutes into it. So I want to watch that because it looks interesting.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting. It's a good way I don't know. I was like, I don't know if I need to watch the first or the second one again for a while. I mean, I know I only watch it like around Halloween, so
yeah.
whatever. It's done for the year, but it is what it. I don't think I was a Hocus Pocus kid. I don't think I watched. I don't think I watched it when I was a kid. I think we waited till we were adults to get into that. um. Okay, so you brought up 4 hours of sleep. Whether or not that's an exaggeration, I don't know. Is
It's
it?
not.
Okay.
It's not. There's some days I get more. On average, I sleep 4 hours. I am like so when I leave here, when I get done with you podcasting,
Mhm.
I will get in my car, I'll go home, and I'll have a child who wants my attention. I have a wife who wants my attention. It's like everybody's talked about. You have to have that work life balance.
Mhm.
Well, my wife is 10 years younger than me, but she's in the body of a person who is 40 years older than me. She goes to bed at like 8:30. Okay.
Hey, that's great. She probably
So
feels
I get
great the
to
next day.
So my wife stays at home.
But she still probably feels great the next day.
Yeah, I mean, she's just stay, so she doesn't have to leave the house. I mean, no, she's always tired. That's my other thing. She's always tired, but she also sleeps 12 hours a day. So when I get home, most depending on what time it is, like we may eat dinner and then I get to watch one show and then she goes to bed, and that's when I get to unwind.
Yeah.
Or do content. It depends if I'm trying to, I might stay up for an hour. I'm always trying to learn stuff. So like I watch a lot of YouTube videos about coding and about fantasy. Like the other day, I was trying to figure out how DFS ownership is calculated. So then I went down a rabbit hole where I read an article from 6 years ago written by one guy, and then another article written 2 years ago by another guy, and then when I watched a YouTube video where this guy's like doing spreadsheet calculations, and then the nerd in me just is like, I've got to figure this out, and I have to come up with the best calculations in the world, and then I start drinking, and then I want to like relax, and then I want to watch my shows or whatever it is, and I love cooking shows. I love cooking shows.
Oh,
What's
your favorite cooking show?
Beat Bobby Flay.
Okay,
I guess
like that one.
It's a cooking competition. I used to love Cutthroat Kitchen. If you've never watched it, Cutthroat Kitchen. I'll go back and just restart watching seasons of that, on Hulu or whatever.
I was talking to Dale about. Well, he saw one of my tweets one time about how I was like, we need a Cutthroat Kitchen.
Oh, that's right.
Draft.
That's right. And you guys did that this year at the Expo.
We were going to. I don't know if they did or not. I didn't. I drafted, but we didn't do that. So I don't know. But yeah. So anyway, back to your. You like to watch the cooking shows.
Yeah, I'm big into smoking meats. I love. Me and my three best friends. We have a competition every year for the Kentucky Derby. So I picked. We all like our own sports, but none of us care about the Kentucky Derby at all. We're not rich. We don't own a horse. We're never going to go to it. We have no interest in it. I'll bet on it because why not? But it wasn't anything where we have to watch the Derby. So if we miss it, we're upset. So I decided one day, I was like, hey, we should have a cooking competition between the four of us. And we'll do it on the Kentucky Derby Day every year. And it became an annual tradition. So now we do it. We have this competition. We have a tiny little trophy that we have. And I've never won it. This whole thing was my idea, and I've never won this competition once. But it's just I want to do it for fun. So we'll every year we'll pick an item. And first it used to be we all picked our own thing. So I could pick ribs, and you could pick chicken, or you could pick a brisket or whatever it is. And then we'd all compete, and we'd invite our friends over, and our friends are the judges. We pick 4 people. They get to judge blind, So this last year we changed it when COVID hit. We changed it so we all cooked the same thing. So then we did a brisket, and now we have 4 huge briskets. And it's like so it became like this event where we have to invite all our friends and family, so we don't have to take all this food home.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I wish I lived closer. I'd totally come. Dang, I'm hungry.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, that's awesome, though. What else do you like to do in your free time, when you have free time?
So I love. I try and do a lot with my kids. So I'm divorced. I'm twice divorced. Twice divorced. So all my kids don't live with me. So I try and be a part of their lives as much as I can. So my boys, I have twin boys, and they love baseball. So in the summer, I do a lot of helping coach them or going to see them play or whatever. This year, the 4-year-old, her birthday was just in time to make the under 6 category for soccer. So my wife was like, hey, I'll make a deal with you. I'll do all the admin stuff. I'll do all the texting parents and snacks if you will coach the kids and let me watch Reagan. That's her name, our daughter. If you let me watch Reagan play, I want to be a mom on the sidelines watching my kid play. Well, the 4-year-old has the attention span of a 4-year-old. So I put her in the games to start. We have 8 kids, and I put Reagan in the beginning of the game. And then she immediately asked me if she can go sit with mommy. So then I put her out, and then halftime I bring her back in and she plays, and she chases the other little girl on the team around, and they play. And then the kids play soccer around them. So it's fun. I get to coach 4-year, a bunch of, under 6-year-olds playing soccer.
Yeah.
One kid likes to meow. One kid pretends to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Nice.
One kid always wants to fight my shadow, which is really weird.
That's pretty
But
cool.
all,
Okay.
I know. They're all a bunch of happy, healthy little kids.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
I try and do a lot of stuff with my kids. I've got my daughter's 16,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm helping her start her own business.
Oh, cool.
We're launching her website at the end of this month. She makes soaps and lotions and stuff like that, and we're trying to get all that going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just whatever I can. And my 23-year-old, the oldest, he's grown. So I mean, I hear from him, happy Father's Day, happy birthday. It's happy. He lives down the road from me, like in a different city. He lives with his mom, and where his mom lives.
Mm-hmm.
And he's happy and healthy and hasn't produced a small child yet. He hasn't gone to jail. He's not. I'm just like productive member of society. I'm good with it. So a lot of what I do is either fantasy football related, or doing stuff with my kids, or cooking. Like the cooking, I love. I have an upright smoker that I cook in, and then I have one of those pellet grills.
Cool.
And I have a hibachi in the backyard. So,
oh wow,
that, and I like whiskey. I like whiskey a lot. So drinking is my other pastime.
Fun. Hey, those are all very fun pastimes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So it's good to have some fun stuff going on in your life.
Yeah.
Well, some more fun stuff going on in your life is all the content and everything, but I want everybody to know where to find such content and where to find you at. So to wrap things up, Austin, appreciate you coming here. Oh my gosh, it's been a long time coming. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Man, for sure. Go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you and where all your stuff is located.
So I'm Austin Thompson. I am on Twitter at Austin Wrote That. And people always ask, why did you pick that? And it's because I write articles and I also write code.
Boom.
So I was like, that feels good.
Yeah.
So yeah, on Twitter at Austin Wrote That. I'm on Facebook at Austin Wrote That also, if you want to follow me. I'm trying to get better about putting out more content. The Fantasy Football Morning Show is about to be rebooted. You can go back and listen to previous episodes. I'm telling you, they are not good, and it's okay. Because I aspire to get better, and then Eat Sleep Fantasy, where I'm also at Austin Wrote That there. I'm responsible for the website and the editing and filling in when people can't write their articles for whatever reason. But yeah, that's it. Austin Wrote That pretty much everywhere.
Austin Wrote That pretty much everywhere. No, but really go follow him and check out all of his work and keep an eye out for the soaps and the lovely stuff, because I'm sure once that website gets up for your daughter, we'll be helping out with the community. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
And for everybody out there, I don't know when the next episode's coming out. That's what I like to say. So, but until then, make sure that you remember to stay rad.
Yes.
Yes.